Hey guys, and welcome to Ozzie Reviews, and welcome to July Q&A. Now we're already into August at the time of doing this. It's Friday, 2nd of August, and the weekend's upon us. So I hope that you guys are going to get out and have some fun outdoors, shooting at the range, or just going out hunting, or just enjoying the outdoors in general. So let's get stuck straight into this month's questions. By all means, guys, if you want to become a part of this, remember, you need to be a supporter on Patreon or a PayPal supporter. So let's jump straight into this month's questions. Okay, so the first question I've got here is from Connor, and he says, "Hey Ozzie, I was wondering if you currently reload for the 223, and is it worth the upfront cost for the gear, especially for a new shooter? And would you consider doing a beginner series on the subject?" Well, mate, I did touch on it briefly in my beginner series on choosing the correct centerfire rifle, scope and ammunition. But personally, I don't reload. I haven't reloaded in years, and the reason for that is I find the calibers that I mainly use, which is 22, 223, 308. You can buy them obviously in bulk and save a lot of money. Now naturally the 22 is not applicable because you can't reload for the rimfire, but with centerfire 223, I mean those OSA loaded ammunition with the Game Kings, or even the Blitz Kings, you can get them well under $1 a shot. So for me, it's not really worth it. The best advice I could give you, mate, would be see how they shoot through your rifle. If you can get ammunition that's under $1 a shot for 223 and it shoots a half-inch group there at 100, I mean, do you really want to go into the cost of reloading? For me, the answer is no. But if you're one of these guys who, just want to get, between sort of 0.1, 0.2 of an inch at 100, and anything larger than that is just completely unacceptable, by all means go into reloading where you can really fine tune your load. But for me, that's just not applicable. So that's the best advice I could give you with that. Next question I got here is from Grant, and he says, maximum point blank range, or MPBR. I currently use 3 calibers, 17 HMR, 223 and 308. In the past, I've used a 22 Magnum, 22 50 and 243. The 22 50 shot so flat that I didn't really have to hold over much for it. I then ranged them an inch high at 100 and left it. Having 3 entirely different calibers now, can you explain MPBR and the optimal range to zero the above calibers? Well, first of all, mate, for everyone who's, obviously watching this, maximum point blank range means the distance that you can hold dead center on a target and it can still make a hit. So that's going to change, obviously, depending on what you're shooting at. I mean, because, your vital organs on a rabbit, for example, is a lot smaller than, the vital organs on a large deer. So it really depends. But for me personally, I don't like any variation over about 2 inches for the maximum point blank range. So going through those calibers, we'll start off with the 17 HMR. So if you're using the 17 HMR and you sight it in at 125 yards, so at 50 yards, we got, I did write it down here so I didn't forget. At 50 yards, it's half an inch high. At 100 yards, it's 0.8 of an inch high. At 150 yards, it's 1.4 inches low, okay? And that's with 125 yard zero. So, for me, I definitely wouldn't be shooting anything over 150 yards with a 17 HMR. So, that's where I find that it would be applicable there for that maximum point blank range. Why I'm only going to 200 yards as well is because for hunting, for me, I've said it many times before, is between 75 and 125 yards typically. So, 200 yards would be an absolute maximum shot for me when it comes to hunting, definitely. So moving on to the 223, now that 17 HMR was with the 17 grain VMAX. So with the 223, we'll just use the standard bullet weight, which is 55 grain VMAX. Now I shoot that out of my Anschutz, I shoot it out of my Lithgow LA102, and I do have them sighted at 200 yards. For all the years that I was doing pest control, I used to like to sight my 223s at 200 yards. And the reason is because, it does fire fairly flat to that distance. So at 50 yards, it's 0.4 of an inch high. At 100 yards, it's 1.4 inches high. and 150 yards it's 1.3 inches high, and then it's 0 naturally at 200 yards. So the absolute maximum variation that you'll get from the muzzle to 200 yards is 1.4 inches, which is nothing, you know, for when you're looking at shooting at the vital organs or the vital zone on different game. Doesn't matter whether it's rabbits or, you know, it's pigs or larger game. Now, for the 308, really I find the optimal distance there is 175 yards. Now, that's using a standard 165 grain projectile. So there's many out there, you know, like the Sierra Game Kings, which is a personal favourite of mine in 308. So if you have that sighted for 175 yards, 0.7 of an inch high at 50 yards, 1.6 inches high at 100 yards, 0.9 of an inch high at 150 yards, and 1.3 inches low at 200 yards. Okay, so that's 175 yard zero. So once again, you know, we really don't have you know, too much of a variation there. I mean, obviously you've got near on 3 inches, but look, that's probably the best that you can do, you know, if you're going to be shooting that distance anyway. So obviously if you go to a lighter projectile with 308, then, you know, that's going to be different again. You can calculate it. But the best advice for it is what I usually do to work out different calibers with different bullet weights is go and use a calculator, a ballistic calculator. So you can go to, like, you know, Hornady's website. There's various different ammunition websites that have ballistic calculators, and you can put in obviously the ballistic coefficient, the weight of the projectile and everything else. So, you know, put that in, and then obviously you can just trial it at different distances and see what's going to be best for the distance and the game that you're going to be shooting. So yeah, that's probably the best that I can offer advice there with, but definitely try that if you're watching this at home. Okay, so the next question I got here is from Gavin. He says, Ozzie, apart from setting up a specific hide or bait drop, if you're walking or driving around, what's the usual distance that you'll get a shot at game at? I have found that walking or driving around and trying to locate ferals, I generally have a shot within 100 yards, so it really opens up your choice of calibers. Well, yes, correct, mate. As I've said a lot of times, you know, for me, hunting distances generally are between 75 and 125 yards. So, you know, I stick by that. It's always been like that for many years, and game don't change. You know, they don't suddenly get smart and go, okay, well, I'm going to now move out to 500 yards from any person I see. Yeah, it just doesn't happen like that. So, yep, predominantly 75 to 125 yards. Now, you've got another question here saying, what caliber or calibers do I use for scrub shooting? And if out for rabbits, foxes, or got some roo tags for the plains, what do you take then? Mate, pretty much, look, 223 is the all-round go-to for that. I mean, you know, obviously you've got to comply with that humane code there when it comes to macropod destruction, meaning roos. So, you know, 223 is the ideal caliber there. You know, for foxes and rabbits and stuff like that, I mean, you know, really, like 22 Magnum's a great caliber for that. A lot of people overlook it, but, you know, with the correct shot placement, in other words, you know, head shooting them, like, you know, out to 100 yards, 125 yards, no problem at all. You can definitely take foxes and rabbits with a 22 Magnum. So they are my two choices there. Now, we've got one last question from Gav as well. He says, what pistol round would you like to take after pigs that you may not have tried yet? Mate, to be quite honest, I'd love to get out there with a 357 Magnum, you know, like the Ruger 77 in 357 Magnum. Like, that'd be a great little rifle to get out there and just have a bit of fun with in general. I think, you know, out to 100 yards there, coming out of a rifle, a 357 Magnum load would be just fantastic. So, yeah, I've used 44 Magnum obviously when I had that Rossi circuit judge, and yeah, but I've not got out with the 357 Magnum, and that'd be something that I'd like to do. So the next couple of questions I've got here are from Pat, and he says, "Hi Ozzie, thanks for the ongoing reviews. What are your thoughts on the current deer issue, which has been in the media a fair bit?" Well, mate. Yeah, I'm assuming you're talking about, you know, down south, because, you know, obviously here in Queensland, you know, deer are a feral pest. I believe they've been arguing about, I guess, specifying deer as a feral pest in other states. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, they are a feral pest. They do cause a lot of problems, but yeah, they're a magnificent animal too. You know, I've got a lot of respect for deer. You know, when I do take one, obviously I use the meat and stuff like that. They are just a majestic animal in my view. So I think at the end of the day, yeah, they're a feral pest, but there's so much use for that good meat that you find on deer. So I'd like to see, you know, being open up to obviously, you know, licensed shooters so that they can go out there, you know, take their son or their daughter out for the experience, you know, get a deer and utilize the meat to feed the family. I think there's nothing more important than doing stuff like that. So, yeah, I hope that sort of answers your question. If there's any debate on whether they should be classed as a feral pest or not, well, they are, because they're an introduced species to Australia. Now, your next question here is asking, what do I think of the 30-06 versus 308 as a hunting round? Cheers. All right, well, mate, this is something I've had both of, you know, obviously 308, 30-06. I do find that 308 is cheaper. There's a wide variety of ammunition for 308 available here in Australia. 30-06, like, you know, you can still get good ammunition, don't get me wrong, but 308 is definitely more popular. And you've really got to look at it. I mean, you know, if you were going after, say, I don't know, hypothetically, you were going after some buffalo and you were going to load up some 220 grain round nose, I'd probably suggest, yeah, look, go for the 30-06. But you know, if it's just general hunting like pigs, you know, deer, all that sort of thing, the 308 does the job with ease with those lighter projectiles, such as like the 165 grain Game King and stuff like that. I mean, the 30-06 in general usually is only moving around about 125 feet a second faster than what the 308 is. So, you know, it's not ridiculously faster. So yeah, you just have to weigh up the costs and everything. But honestly, a 308 is my preference. And I mean, I definitely got rid of a 30-06 previously because I wanted to just have a 308. Next question I got here is from Lee, and he says, "Hi Ozzie, my young fella wants to get his first rifle. Any suggestions for a lightweight 22LR that can grow with him, please?" Mate, 100% Ruger American. Go for the shorter version. Now they've got the standard and then there's a compact. But what a lot of people don't realise is you can interchange the stock inserts with them. So if you get the compact, well then you can actually get the stock insert that goes on the back from the standard model and it'll fit. So, you know, in other words, it can grow with your boy. So definitely have a look at one, mate. I mean, I've still got mine. I've had it for years, as I've mentioned before. And, you know, I've had no problems with it, none whatsoever. It's just been a great little rifle. And I've made that recommendation to several of my close friends. They've all got them and all love them as well. Next question I got here is from Aaron. It's a funny question, this one. He says, just wondering, Ozzie, you've done a few reviews on the 6.5 Creedmoor as a calibre now. I must say it has a fair bit going for it. I'm just wondering if you've noticed any of the so-called ill effects, i.e. taking longer to get ready than your partner when going out, sudden urges to drink soy lattes, or concerns as to what pair of camo pants to wear. Thanks again and keep up the great work. Well, Aaron, no, mate, I haven't. I've just seen the light when it comes to long-range shooting with it. It's got a hell of a lot going for it. So, yeah, but I've had none of those ill effects. Next question I got here is from Gary, and he says, "Hi Ozzie, what is your all-time favourite gun? If you can have anything, no stupid laws apply. Cheers, Gaz." Mate, I would have said for many, many years the Ruger 1022, you know, has been my favourite rifle. You know, it really has. It's just a fantastic rifle. But now I'd have to say that Chris Defiance, the little AR-15 and 22 I got, I absolutely love that. But I think very much on the same level, I absolutely love my Anschutz rifles. You know, as much as I love shooting 223s and 308s and all that sort of stuff, I just love a rimfire. You know, I love a good accurate 22. So my Anschutz 1710 would have to be on that same level. Now I've got a question from another Gary here. He says, "Hey Ozzie and team, do you think we'll ever see competitive shooting like 2-gun or 3-gun in the US? or maybe there are some around that you know of. I'm aware that our laws are a massive hindrance to this, but I'm interested in more physical shooting comps than what are commonly on offer. Cheers, Gary. Mate, you know, I was recently playing around, got one of those Warwick Arms straight pull rifles, and, you know, I found that really good, you know, because obviously up to the shoulder there, you're firing it and you've got the charging handle, so to speak, on the left-hand side, so you're holding the pistol grip, you pull it back, let it go, fire, pull it back, let it go, fire. And I was thinking to myself, you know, we really could have a 3-gun equivalent here. You know, you could use those sort of rifles. Then obviously, you know, we're not as restrictive with pistols, so we can still use a pistol. When it comes to a shotgun, well, perhaps we could use, you know, a lever action shotgun or one of the straight pull shotguns, or, you know, even a double or triple barrel shotgun. So, you know, I definitely think it's possible. I believe that they've got something similar. I know Western Action Shooting have something similar, but mate, I don't go to ranges, so I don't really know all the competitions. You'd really have to make some inquiries at your local range, or if anyone watching this at home knows, please feel free to comment below and let us know if there's any, you know, 3-gun type competitions here in Australia. Next question I got here is from Ian. He says, Ozzie, you did a review of the Leupold LTO HD2 tracker. Do you know anything of the Nighttech brand of thermal viewer? Apparently they're excellent value for money. Yes, mate, I have seen them. I've not used them personally, but I've definitely seen them. The big thing I've found, like I've played around with the Fleur breach, and that was a really good thermal optic. Now, you know, it wasn't a weapon sight as such, it was just a monocular. And when I was having a play around with it, like, it was good. I was looking at some rabbits and stuff about sort of around about that 100 yards away. And, you know, it was a 320 by 240 resolution. So what I found with it was when I was looking, I saw the heat signature and I thought, well, hang on, what is that? I can't quite make out what it was, but as soon as it moved, I could tell. So for me personally, I wanted to move up to, you know, the next one, which is like the 640 by 480 resolution, but, you know, you double your cost by doing it. So where I'm going with this, Ian, is no matter which brand you go for, I mean, if you can afford it, try to go up to the 640 resolution, because I do find the 320, for me personally, just isn't quite there. So yeah, that'd be my advice there, mate. But no, I'd be definitely keen to have a look at one of those Nighttech brands, you know, in person and have a play with it. Next question I got here is from Edwin, and he says, hi Ozzie, do you know if feral pig meat is okay for dogs to eat? Cheers. Well, mate, yeah, there's a couple of things to look at there. Like, yes, you can give it to your dog raw, but usually if you do that, don't give it to them just, you know, straight, that's it. Mix it with some beef, mix it with some of their dry biscuits or something like that. My advice would be definitely to cook it. Things to look for though, like, you know, if you, when you're butchering it, have a look at the liver. I mean, if the liver's got spots on it or it's even pussy, you know, there's definitely a problem. Also too, the glands in the hind quarters there, like if you're cutting through them and, you know, and they actually feel like it's almost like sandpaper if you cut through that, you know there's a problem. That's the problem with feral pigs, because they just eat so much stuff out there in the wild. You know, it's easy for them to pick up, like, you know, 1080 baits and different poisons and stuff like that. So you've got to be really careful. So like I say, the best advice I could give would be to actually cook the meat for your dog, and then that would lower a lot of problems with, you know, potential parasites. Last question I got here is from Richard, and he says, Ozzie, is the 6.5 Creedmoor taking over the 308, as so many manufacturers now are making it, or is it just good marketing? Well, mate, a couple of things. It's funny because you look at the 6.5 by 55 Swedish Mauser that's been around for donkey's years. And I mean, the 6.5 Creedmoor is only traveling at around about 100 feet a second faster, you know, but there's just so much more available for it in the sense of, you know, factory ammo, match ammo, all that sort of thing, with a 6.5 by 55 is very limited. So I think, yeah, it is a combination of good marketing, but what they've done is they've picked a round, you know, being the 6.5 caliber that has, you know, good ballistic coefficients, and just designed a cartridge that's just going to push it that little bit further, so that obviously, you know, out at greater distance, it's remaining supersonic. I mean, you know, with a 6.5 Creedmoor over a 308, you're supersonic to roughly about 400 yards further than what a 308 is, you know, depending on bullet weights naturally. So, you know, for me, I mean, you know, when I was shooting that 6.5 Creedmoor out at 1400, you know, like I was just amazed with just the ease of using it. You know, it was just a really nice caliber to use, and that was in the Sabatti, the STR, if you haven't seen that review. So, you know, with that, I couldn't have done that with 308 as accurately and with the ease because, you know, by 1400, the 308s really tapered off, you know, and that's the problem. You go through that transonic zone. So in other words, you travel from, you know, above the speed of sound to below it. And that's when a lot of the time the actual projectile will lose a lot of the aerodynamics. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of merit to it. But they've just enhanced on technology that's been around for a long, long time, meaning the 6.5 by 55 caliber. Okay, guys, so that finishes up this month's Q&A. So as I said, guys, if you want to become a part of this, please have a look at Patreon or being a PayPal supporter, and you can submit these questions every month. So once again, thanks very much to everyone who's put them in, and we'll catch you on the next review.